Hi everybody. So today we're going to look at the strategy and tactics of including a unit of Wraithguard in your Eldar army. I've had a lot of people ask me to do a tactical video on these guys. I guess there's a lot of interest in them. They are a very cool unit. They look very cool. They have very un-Eldar-like stats, which is what makes them very interesting. They're not fragile. They don't have a bad armor save. They have an incredible gun. I mean, it's a very interesting unit. The thing about these guys is that you have to understand that they are a foot unit in an army that generally these days is fielded in a mechanized fashion. So you're going to have to use them in a sort of way that's going to make them useful for you. But they do have some very intriguing qualities and abilities that might make you want to field these guys. So let's talk about that. Okay, let's talk stats and abilities. Same weapon skill and ballistic skill as a Space Marine, very respectable. Strength of 5, toughness of 6, 3+ armor save. Very, very impressive. There's not very many troopers, single wound troopers in 40k that have a toughness of 6. I mean, that is incredibly impressive. Leadership of 10, and they are fearless. So they're not going to be running off the board anytime soon. And given that their save is so impressive, and the fact that you can put a Farseer with them to Fortunate, that fearlessness is not going to be a drawback because you're not going to fail very many fearless saves, even if you lose combat. Very resilient unit if you fortune them. They have a gun that's actually very impressive. Single shot, 12-inch range, AP 2, always wounds on a 2+, inflicts instant death on a 6, and it gains vehicles, always glances on a 3 or 4, and always penetrates. Very impressive gun. Multi-purpose, can fight any target. If you're fighting elite infantry, great. If you're shooting at a monstrous creature, great. If you're shooting at vehicles, even if they're armor 14, great. These guys are very useful in that regard. Unfortunately, their gun is very short range. It's only 12-inch range. You're not going to get many shots off with this unit against a crucial target if that target is capable of assaulting you. And we'll talk about that weakness later on. But pretty impressive stats. Unfortunately, they're 35 points each. They are extremely expensive to field. Man, these guys are not cheap, so you're going to have to find ways to make them resilient. They take an elite slot. However, if you field 10 of them with a Spirit Seer, then suddenly they become troops. This monstrosity, this basically 400-point monstrosity, becomes a troop unit. Very hard to move off of an objective. They can move forward on the board and own an objective somewhere. They can gun down vehicles and infantry that come towards them. Pretty intriguing choice, and I think this is the main way to field these guys. I don't really recommend fielding them any other way, whether it's inside a vehicle, whether it's in some other kind of way. I mean, this is the way to field them. The last thing you need to know about these guys is that they do have a built-in drawback called Wraith Sight. Wraith Sight just means that if they don't start the turn within 6 inches of a Psyker, or 12 inches of a Spirit Seer, which we'll talk about later, you roll a dice, and on a 1, the unit does nothing. Nothing. It just sits there until the end of their next turn. I mean, that is a crippling drawback. This is why you need to have Psykers in your army. But luckily, there's an easy way to fix that, so we'll talk about that in a second. Let's talk gear options. These guys all come with stock gear. You can't change the Wraith Cannon, you can't give them any kind of a special power weapon, you can't give them any special abilities individually. However, what you do have is a Warlock that you can add to the unit. The Warlock is pretty much a crucial choice with these guys, for the first reason being that he is a Psyker. So if you put the Warlock in the unit, you get rid of having to worry about Wraith Sight. Very important. Now, the Warlock can choose a whole slew of abilities. There's a bunch of psychic powers he has, his Warlock abilities. These are powers that do not have to be rolled for. They're just permanently always on. The first one is the most important one. This is the power you're going to put 99% of the time on the unit. It's called Conceal. What Conceal does is it gives you a cover save of 5+, even when you're out in the open. Even when you're standing around in the open, these guys have a cover save. That is crucial for these guys. Because even though they have great toughness, even though they have a great armor save, weapons that are designed to cut armor and to be high strength are going to murder these guys. I mean, las cannons, crack missiles, plasma cannons, hitting 3 or 4 guys at once, just nuking them instantly. You need a cover save. And because these guys have such short-range guns, you don't want them sitting out on some distant objective, trying to hold it. you know, you want these guys up in the fight, so you're going to have to give them that conceal save. Very important to give them that conceal save, which, if you have a Farseer, fortuning them is going to be a re-rollable 5+, which, as we know, is better statistically than a 4+, a single save. The other abilities, let's talk about them. Destructor, Heavy Flamer. You know, Heavy Flamers are always a great thing. In this unit, if you're going to put them on foot, you're not gonna use it just because you'd rather have conceal. Maybe if you have a tiny unit inside a vehicle, it might be a better choice because there'll be 3 guys and you'll have an extra flamer. Not my first choice in the unit. You have Enhance, which boosts their close combat, initiative, and weapon skill. Again, not a great upgrade for these guys. They're not supposed to be in melee. They are actually not that great in melee. They can only tie things up, but the problem is because they're so expensive, things are happy to tie them up. And, you know, Enhance is not going to help them very much because you need power weapons really to cut through combats. It also, if you take it, again, it means that you can't take that cover save. And the last power is Embolden. 5 points, very cheap, lets the entire unit reroll leadership checks. Not great on these guys because they are fearless. They don't need those leadership checks. Theoretically, if you have a Farseer in the unit, of course, you can use Embolden to reroll his psychic tests for his powers. But again, it's not a great use because this guy on his own, usually you can put Runes of Witnessing on him anyways. And you're not getting any other benefit out of those rerolled leadership checks in this unit. And taking it, again, means that you're not taking Conceal. So it's just not very common power you see on these guys. In terms of weapon options on this guy, he comes with the Witchblade, Strength 9 against vehicles, always wounds on a 2+ in regular melee combat, but it's not a power weapon. You can swap that out for a Singing Spear. Singing Spear is a pretty intriguing upgrade on these guys because this unit already has great anti-vehicle guns that are range 12 assault, and the Singing Spear is a range 12 assault anti-vehicle weapon. Strength 9 against vehicles, otherwise behaves the same way in close combat as Witchblade, except that it takes 2 hands, so you lose the pistol bonus. Because as you've noticed, these guys have pistols on them. So you lose the bonus from the pistol because you're wielding it two-handed. But still, a pretty intriguing choice for your Warlock because it's going to synergize very well with your guns. Last upgrade is the Spirit Seer upgrade. So by simply paying about 6 points, you turn him into a Spirit Seer, which means that even though he's already a Psyker, so he's already giving these guys, taking away Wraith Sight, it means that if you have other Wraith units nearby, you can have them close by, and he will take away Wraith Sight from those guys as well. He will negate the negative effects of Wraith Sight. If this guy is, up to 12 inches away somewhere way back there maybe, right? Suddenly you are negating Wraith Sight. Okay, let's talk common loadouts for the unit. By far the most common way you're going to field these guys effectively is a full unit of 10 with a Spirit Seer. And why is that? First of all, Spirit Seer with a unit of 10 makes these guys a troop choice instead of an elite choice. That is crucial. When you're investing this many points in a unit, to have them become a troop choice is just gold. It really helps, especially because in the Eldar Codex we struggle to put troop choices on the board. The second thing is, this unit needs to be fortuned. You need to have a Farseer of some kind in your armory fortuning these guys, because Fortune takes these guys to a whole new level. Without Fortune, they're pretty cool. Toughness 6, 3+ armor save, potential 5+ cover save in the open. They're pretty cool, but they're going to go down pretty easily to things like, battle cannons, things like plasma cannons. They're eventually going to go down pretty easily just to like a strength of, maybe heavy bolter shooting or something, right? With Fortune, though, that makes their odds of survival go from 1 in 3 on a wound to 1 in 9 when they're using their regular armor save. And with a rerollable 5+ from the potential of Conceal, that's actually a better statistical chance than if it was a single 4+ save. They have a better than 50-50 chance of surviving armor-piercing wounds, which is really going to be crucial because your opponent's going to be dumping every nasty gun he can at these guys to kill them. Plasma cannons, here we go, Big shots from Vindicators, get ready, right? That gives you a good chance to at least survive and maybe take a better position. Crucial to field them. Other ways of fielding them, potentially, you throw them in a Wave Serpent. A Wave Serpent can carry up to 12 models. Each one of these guys counts as 2 models, so you could have up to a unit of 5 with a Spirit Seer and even a character in there if you wanted. This is 10, 11, 12. Each of these guys is 2. I don't really recommend this kind of setup, even if you were going to go the cheap way, which would be, for instance, 3 of them with a Spirit Seer, or with just a regular Warlock. It is kind of cool, so you fly around your vehicle, you can drop these guns. Their guns have a decent ability against vehicles, they're very good against other infantry models. The problem is this unit is extremely expensive. And, their guns are not as good as Melta's at blowing up vehicles. So you're going to struggle in that regard. You're going to become a much easier kill point. There's only 3 models, plus their little buddy helping them there. So, that's a problem. I don't really recommend going in the vehicle route. There's better things to put in vehicles, namely Fire Dragons. So stick to the foot slogging unit. Alright, let's talk strategy. Why do you put these guys into your army? What are they going to do for your army? The main thing they're going to do is they're going to be an extremely resilient core for the army. They are very good in the center of the board. They let you control and kind of take command of the center of the board because they are so resilient, because they are so nasty at shooting, and because your opponent's going to have a relatively tough time of cutting through them, even if he is to assault them. So they let you kind of put a damper on action in the middle of the board. They really are a basis of resilience in your army. They're troops, so they can slowly advance towards the opposing objective and have a good chance of really fighting through it, shooting things down on it. They're just a great anvil unit. So that's the main reason you take these guys. Now, I'm talking, of course, about the 10-strong foot squad with a Farseer of some kind, with the Warlock in there. If you're talking about a squad inside a smaller squad inside a Wave Serpent, those guys, I guess they sort of do the same thing Fire Dragons try to do, except that, unlike Fire Dragons, when these guys pop out and blow up a vehicle, they're probably not going to get killed by the explosion, first of all. And second of all, after they're out in the open, it's going to take a lot of work to gun them down. So there is something to be said for that, because Fire Dragons, as we know, are kind of a suicide unit usually. They get in there, blow up one vehicle, then everything guns into them, and a bunch of crappy Strength 4 and Strength 5 shots gun them down. That's not going to happen with these guys usually. However, generally speaking, if you are going to use them in the most common way, then they're going to be an anvil unit for you. Okay, let's talk tactics with these guys. The first thing is their guns are very good at wrecking vehicles. Always glancing on a 3 or 4, always penetrating on a 5 or 6. They have a ballistic skill of 4, which means they're going to hit more often than they miss usually. They're going to eviscerate vehicles. Like, if you got a Land Raider anywhere within 12, a full unit of 10 of these guys, very good chance they're just going to shred that thing to pieces, right? Pretty impressive that they can do that with consistency. The other thing is that they're very good at killing elite infantry. Their guns are AP 2, and they always wound on a 2+, You got a little straggling unit of Terminators, and you're able to walk into range of them. Oh, good God, you're going to eviscerate those guys too. They're going to be making a lot of invulnerable saves. Very good at slaughtering elite infantry. And you want these guys to be in the middle of the board. You want them to be as close to taking 12-inch shots as they can, which, if you think about it, a 12-inch range on an assault gun means you actually have a 18-inch threat range, because you can move 6 inches and then fire 12. So, that range can be put to some use, when you're in the middle of the board. You don't want to waste these guys on a distant objective, somewhere in the corner of the board, because you've wasted so many points then just holding an objective that could just be contested by, a couple of things that come nearby. You want these guys mixing it up, causing trouble in the middle of the board. Now, the other thing these guys are really good at shooting down is monstrous creatures. You've got 10 shots that are AP2, wounding on a 2+, inflicting instant death on a roll to wound of 6. So, for instance, if these guys, were about to fire at this small group of 2 Tomb Spiders, these Tomb Spiders in the Necron army are now a unit of 1 to 3 spiders that you can put in. They have 3 wounds each, toughness 6, 3+ armor save, very impressive. On average, this unit here, with ballistic skill 4, with no guide even happening, is probably going to hit enough times that they're going to, on average, inflict probably 1 instant death wound and a bunch of other wounds. So there's a very good chance that this unit of 10 would just wipe out both of these Tomb Spiders in a single volley of fire. That is very impressive. Now keep in mind with these guys, if you don't wipe these guys out, they're probably going to charge you, and that's problematic. It's not disastrous because your strength is still 5, so you can still wound on 5s, but they're going to cut through your armor save. Your rerollable shenanigans are not going to work because you have no invulnerable save here. So you got to make sure, whenever you're playing these guys, the thing that you're shooting at has to be something you're going to be pretty certain of either decimating it or weakening it so much that you'll be all right. Because if you just fire, 10 of these guys firing at a group of 10 Terminators, you're probably not going to kill 10 Terminators. I mean, first you have to hit, then you still have to roll 2+, then they get their invulnerable saves. You might kill 3 or 4, let's just say, but then if the other 6 come at you, you're going to be in real trouble because they probably have power weapons. These are Grey Knight ones, so of course they have power weapons. They got force weapons. They're going to be shredding through you. They have ways of raising their strength, but of course they have to get through your Farseer's runes of warding. So there's some play there. But generally, you want to be firing at things that you're going to shred with these guys. If you're firing at something that's inside a Rhino, there's a Rhino and there's some troopers inside. Even though these guys are not great at melee, if what's inside there is a minimum squad of 5 Marines, it is absolutely worth it to nuke that Rhino and then assault the guys that were inside. Because even though these guys are not great at melee, 5 Marines against 10 Wraithguard, that is a terribly lopsided battle in your favor. It's probably worth it. So when I say you don't like having these guys in melee, that's more of a general kind of thing. If you're facing a few Marines, hey, go for that assault. It might help you just cleave your way through. So how do you chop through combat with these guys? Well, the most common thing is to put some kind of character in or near the unit that is going to be ignoring armor saves. It's going to let them cut through. The first option that you see a lot of people do, and it's a very recommendable option, is to put Eldrad with the unit. You know Eldrad, you love him. Special character Farseer that can cast up to 3 powers a turn, 2 of which can be the same power. And his weapon wounds on a 2+ always, strength 9 against vehicles, like a Witchblade, but it also ignores armor saves. It is a power weapon. So that is really crucial. That lets you chop through things that would otherwise get armor saves against all these guys here. Also, because Eldrad can cast 2 powers that are the same one each turn, he could, for instance, fortune his unit and then fortune something else nearby. For instance, maybe a Wraithlord hiding behind some kind of terrain. Or, for instance, he could also fortune the Avatar. Pretty resilient core there. A fortuned Avatar and a fortuned unit of Wraithguard. Very impressive. Now, keep in mind that Eldrad cannot use his special extra power if he's engaged in combat. If he's engaged in combat, he just uses 2 powers a turn, and they can't be the same power. So that's something to think about. But the main thing is that his weapon is a power weapon that always wounds on a 2+. There's a few other options. We just shown it off over here, but the Avatar is a great little option. He hangs out with the unit. If you have Eldrad, you can fortune them both, potentially. And he's actually very efficient for his point cost, 155 points. Very, very nasty little guy. I got to do a little video on him sometime. But, this guy just survives with fortune and chops through anything. Weapon skill 10, strength and toughness 6, 3+ armor, 4+ invulnerable. He's a thug. And he can really cut these guys out of sticky situations, You got a bunch of Terminators, fighting the unit, tying it up. Even just 3 Grey Knight Terminators are a real danger to this unit. If it's just 10 guys and they're Spirit Seer fighting 3 Terminators, that's rough. 3 Grey Knight Terminators, these guys have power weapons cutting through. They might be able to raise their strength with a variety of ways that Grey Knights have. You're probably not going to cause any wounds, on average, you're going to hit a few times, wound a few times, and they're going to make all their saves. Maybe they'll fail 1 or 2 occasionally, but you can't really rely on that. Suddenly, the Avatar comes in there. He is just tearing things up. He's hitting these guys easily, he is wounding them easily, and they're having to make their invulnerable saves against a lot of attacks from this guy. This guy could potentially chop this entire unit out of this combat in a single round of combat if he just rolls average. So, that's a very good choice there. Some other choices. Very popular choice you see the kind of famous Death Star version of the unit, which is Eldrad and Iriel inside the same unit. What does Iriel do for the unit? He has a ton of attacks, good weapon skill. His weapon, like Eldrad's, always wounds on a 2+, always ignores armor saves, and against vehicles it's again strength 9. Very impressive for when you're facing something like, a Dreadnought. Without some kind of Witchblade in the unit, the Dreadnought can't even be harmed by these guys. But, strength 9 over here, ripping into this guy. Iriel also has a invulnerable save and a good armor save, which is really good when you're fortuning the whole unit. Pretty solid guy. His main problem is he doesn't have Eternal Warrior. So, a single good, strong hit hits him, he goes down. You're probably also not going to use his special ability, his sort of little area template nuke, because that would just kill these guys potentially. But something to think about. Another option is Karandras, Phoenix Lord Karandras. These guys are not an aspect unit, so he's allowed to join them. What does he give the unit? Not only does he have potential of 7 power fist attacks, you know, I mean, he's a thug. The other thing he does, he gives him stealth. And in 5th edition, if any character, even one character, joins a unit with stealth, that entire unit gains stealth. What does stealth mean? These guys have Conceal, 5+ cover save. You add the +1 from stealth, suddenly that's a 4+ cover save, and we're talking out in the open. On top of that, with Fortune, that save is rerollable, which makes it better than a 3+ single save. Incredibly impressive little trick you can do with Karandras. Very, very nasty. And, you know, he's a melee thug. His main problem is he has no invulnerable save, like most of the Phoenix Lords. However, you know, if they're making attacks on him, then Eldrad's chopping. If they want to stop the Fortune shenanigans, they got to attack Eldrad, which means he's free to reign. You know, pretty compelling choice there. Last choice is to put a regular Autarch with them, but I don't recommend this only because regular Autarch, his toughness is as bad as, you know, as Iriel's, but he doesn't have nearly the combat potential of Iriel. One thing to also talk about, I shouldn't have said last thing, we're going to talk about Banshees. Banshees make a good countercharge unit. You keep them in a vehicle somewhere nearby, you know, you keep them inside a transport. And if these guys get in trouble, they load out and they jump into combat to help you cut your way out. Pretty, you know, good use of Banshees in that regard. And last thing to talk about is Wraith Lords. Wraith Lords are very thematic. They're very appropriate. They're also decent in combat because they're monstrous creatures with strength 10, so they have a chance to help you get cut out of combat. If you're building like a primarily Wraith army, they might be your only way to get cut out of combat. The main problem with these guys is they don't have an invulnerable save. They are toughness 8, but they are susceptible to power fists, things like that. So if you're fighting a really nasty combat enemy, these guys are probably going to go down eventually, as compared to something like a Fortuned Avatar, which could theoretically almost stay alive forever. You know, pretty impressive there. Something to think about. You got to think of how you're going to cut these guys out of combat in your army list if they do get assaulted. Got to keep that in mind. Let's talk weaknesses. So we've already touched on a few of them, but I want to expand, you know, thoughts on those. The first weakness is they are extremely expensive in terms of points. 35 points each. I mean, that is astronomical for a single wound model. You know, and Eldar has a lot of astronomically priced single wound models, but you know that it's starting to get really, really high when you're paying 35 points, even for toughness 6 and 3+ armor save. The next weakness is their guns are very short range, 12-inch range assault. I mean, thank God it's at least an assault gun, but their range is very short. So generally speaking, against a smart opponent, they might get a maximum of 1 shot before, you know, that opponent ties them up with something in melee, sends something nasty after them. You got to think about that. They have no invulnerable save, none whatsoever, no way to gain one. This means that in melee, they are completely susceptible to power weapons, and they do not have any option of power weapons themselves, even though they have strength 5. You know, a Hormigaunt is going to get a save against these guys in combat. Very, very annoying. You know, these guys are not meant to be in combat for very long. You know, even though they're so expensive. I mean, a unit of 10 plus Spirit Seer is basically 400 points. Pretty crazy there. They also, you know, Wraith Sight is a weakness you have to think about, because if, you know, this unit somehow, I don't know what would do it, but something guns in the unit, and, you know, maybe there's 6 guys left and 7 wounds are caused, or you know, whatever, and you have to put a wound on this guy. If he fails that rerollable 4+ invulnerable, he's toast, and Wraith Sight is now gone. So hopefully you have a Farseer in the unit, which would sort of negate Wraith Sight. But if for whatever reason you don't, if that guy dies again, then Wraith Sight comes into play, and suddenly your unit might just lose the game for you because it decides to sit there and do nothing for you know, for until its next turn, which is really brutal. So you have to consider Wraith Sight. These guys are slow. You know, they don't have any speed boosting or anything like that, but you know, it's okay. They're meant to kind of slog their way up the board. Now, in terms of weaponry that's good against these guys, any type of blast or template weapon that ignores their armor save is going to be really, really good. Now, single-shot weapons that ignore their armor save, like las cannons, missiles, things like that, they're no doubt very nasty, but they're not actually a great choice against a correctly outfitted unit of Wraithguard. because that unit of Wraithguard with Fortune, with Conceal, is actually going to pass more than 50% of its saves against those types of weapons anyways. You know, if someone they're going to have to fire in a lot of las cannons, a lot of missiles, just to kill a few guys on this unit, on average. You know, you got to roll to hit, you still have to roll 2+, and on top of that, we have a better than 4+ save if we are re-rolling a 5+ cover save. So, you know, those are not actually great guns to fire at these guys. What are really good guns to fire at here? Plasma cannons. Battle cannons, you know, whatever those Vindicators have, whatever those Imperial Guard tanks with AP3 or AP2 giant blasts have. I mean, those are awesome weapons to fire at these guys. Because even though we're going to make some cover saves, because they're rerollable with Fortune, you know, we're still going to lose guys. I mean, if a giant battle cannon drops in, hits 6 or 7 guys, wounds, you know, 5 or 6 of them, I mean, you know, 2 or 3 are going to probably die in just one fell swoop from a single shot of something. I mean, 2 or 3 guys from a unit that cost you 400 points, that's a lot to lose from a single shot of something. So keep in mind, those kinds of guns are going to eviscerate these guys. Try to play in such a way that you know, gives you extra protection. If you stay inside cover, you'll have a pretty impressive save, or if you have Corandra's with you, it'll be the same sort of thing. So that could protect you a lot, but avoid getting these guys nuked by large armor-piercing blasts. Okay, everybody, so that kind of wraps up this video. You know, there's lots to talk about with these guys, but I hope I've given you a basic sense of, you know, how you use these guys and why you use them. And thanks for watching as always. Take care.